Chapter 19. Scott figured that the ranchers and staff were probably holed up in the main operations building. There was no one in sight as they stumbled through the empty streets towards the structure. Twilight had fallen over the town with no respite from the heat. Scott felt a sense of déjà vu as they walked. Deserted town, lights low, unknown dangers. He looked over his shoulder several times to see if the lector was still there. He was aware that there was no reason it wouldn't be, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was in deadly danger and there was no escape from it. They were near the first set of holding pens when they heard the shriek. From behind them, somewhere, a long, shrill squeal that seemed to echo in the still air rose in pitch and then dwindled into nothing. Not human, whatever it was. Those things in the ship? Scott glanced at Tom. He had gone a deathly white, his eyes huge in his face. What the fuck? Before Tom could finish, the horrible cry came again, closer, gaining. Scott grabbed Tom's arm and they ran for the nearest holding pen. His gut had twisted at the alien's scream. This whole thing was some kind of bad dream, one he didn't want to be in anymore. I'd like to wake up now, please. The entry to the pen stood open. They scrambled in just as another long howl came, louder, closer still, and slammed the heavy door shut. Inside, the dark, stuffy room stank of perspiration and rinse shit. At least they seemed to be alone. What are we going to do? Tom managed, his voice nearly a gasp. Scott shook his head, tried to catch his own breath. The only light in the large room came through a row of small, dirty windows set high on one wall. Other than the door they both leaned against, the only other way in was through the loading hatch, which was closed and locked. We're going to stay here, Scott said finally. But the other people must be... Fuck the other people. The other people have guns. You heard the shooting. We don't. Do you want to go back out there without a weapon? Another scream from outside. Tom's silence was answer enough. They would wait. If somebody wanted in, they could knock and ask politely. And if the voice wasn't human, they sure as shit weren't going to get an open door. Naguchi sat on her bed and stared at the floor, one shaky hand on her forehead. She didn't feel much of anything. At first, there had been a huge sadness, but it had been replaced with a kind of dull acceptance. Hiroki was dead. He and the others had sacrificed themselves for the rest of the colony, and she had failed to use the time he had bought for them. She had failed at everything. Part of her mind kept shouting at her, "Organize! Get this under control! Get yourself together!" It was the same voice that had pushed her through most of her life, the driver of the strong Machiko, who had allowed her to hold her head up. It clamoured in her thoughts now, directed her to get up now, and get going. But she let it run itself in circles. Where was there to go? Naguchi felt as if she had been sitting there for hours, but she knew it had only been a few minutes. Funny. All she had really wanted to do was lie down and sleep until she woke up at home, on Earth, back in the tiny apartment she'd left a million years before. Would that be so bad? Just to give up and wait there until help came, until the damn company sent someone to pick them up. They could probably hold out, just do some heavy reinforcing of the locks and then sit tight. Maybe she could even stay here, in her room. The people downstairs could make do without her. They would figure out something, hide away, do nothing, wait. Yes, that felt right. "Miss Naguchi?" A soft voice crackled over her comm. Naguchi felt her stomach tighten at the sound. Why did they need her? It wasn't fair. She couldn't run a battle. She was an overseer, for Christ's sake. "Ms. Naguchi, this is Weaver." The hesitant voice called again. Naguchi sighed. "Yes, what is it?" It didn't matter. None of it did. "I'm sorry to interrupt or anything. I know you and Mr. Shimura were friends, and I'm sorry to bother..." "What?" She wanted to feel angry, but there was still nothing. "There's something you should see. I could transfer it to your screen. It's the feed from the security cam on the southwest side of the tower. It's dark, though I've boosted the gain. I guess there are a lot of lights out over there." Naguchi turned wearily and looked at the console on her wall, already sorry she'd admitted to being there. Fuck these people. They didn't even like her. What did they expect? Why did she have to take care of them? Why her? The screen snapped on. It was a bonfire. At first, Naguchi didn't recognize that it was a picture from anywhere on Ryushi. She was reminded of old hollows that she had seen on Earth, of tribal dancing, ritual stuff. But the dancers were the warriors, the dragons. Well, no, not really dragons, aliens. There were 5 or 6 of them, the creatures who had killed Hiroki and the others. They ran and stumbled and jumped high in the air all around the fire, which was probably built with debris from the West Lock. Sparks flew, flame cracked and rose into the early evening as the aliens danced and circled. And they carried spears. There was no audio, but Naguchi could imagine the howls of victory. For the spears they held high in the air were decorated with their conquests. As she watched, one of the warriors danced past the cam with one of the black nightmare bug's skulls jammed onto the point of his spear. And the next warrior. She looked away, then returned her gaze to the screen. She didn't want to believe what she had seen, but it was true. Fuzzy and distorted by the heat and bad lighting. But there. Hiroki's decapitated head on the tip of the creature's spear, the sharp bladed end running through his neck and out of his mouth. For just a moment, she thought she might vomit. The alien danced from view, but Naguchi had seen what she had needed to see. The nausea passed. Something new, some new feeling was filling her up. It wasn't sorrow or sickness, although she felt both of those things. No, it was dark and solid and throbbing, like a huge black machine had started running deep inside, at the core of her being. It was a physical sensation, this feeling, a rumble of newness. It was many things, but the easiest to understand was the anger. She watched the celebrating warriors and felt the apathy get eaten by the new machine, chewed and burned away, fuel for the thing at her center. It cleared her mind for what she would need to do. She was going to kill them, all of them, not just for Hiroki's death or the lives of the ranchers, or her own career. She felt almost selfish about her reasons, but in the end, it wouldn't matter. They would die because they had dared to try her. She was a woman of honor, and they stood against her. Roth and Kathy stood near the table where Spanner sat, Noguchi's gun in front of him. A lot of the others watched also, although there wasn't really much to see. Spanner had already filled 8 speedloaders and was working on his 9th. He fed the rounds in slowly, and the metallic clicks were loud in the quiet room when he closed the latch knob. It had been pretty silent here since Hiroki's last transmission. Naguchi had been gone for 20 minutes or so, which was just as well. Roth hadn't liked seeing the new overseer choke up. Tears would have been okay, but Naguchi had just swallowed it and gone inside of herself. It was too bad. Roth had seen an iron thread in Naguchi during the setup of the barricades, and she had hoped they would see more of it. Bitch or no, she was competent under stress, or so they had thought. They were going to need that, given what they were up against. Ackland had made a short speech after Naguchi had walked out, about how they were all going to have to pull together and decide what their next move would be. But he was dry-mouthed and scared. He didn't have any suggestions after that. And finally, he sat back down. He didn't know what to do either. Kathy kept a firm grip on her arm as the silent tension grew. Roth knew her spouse didn't want to step forward, although she was as qualified as anyone else, maybe more so. She didn't want to lead the colony, but someone would have to. Much as he wished it would have been Naguchi, Roth didn't think she was going to come back. Spanner continued to load bullet holders methodically, high-velocity hunting rounds, jacketed slugs that would punch through a wall. Someone would need them. Naguchi stepped into the room quietly. "Miss Naguchi." Ackland looked and sounded confused. She had pulled her hair back and knotted it tightly at the base of her neck. She wore a fully padded coverall, the kind that the Rinth workers wore during gelding time. The suit was designed to dull impact from stray kicks, and had saved Roth herself from a lot of injuries. She had strapped a carbine to her back and wore knee and elbow leathers, as well as gloves. A comset hung loosely around her neck, and her eyes were cold and hard. Roth grinned nervously, and felt Kathy's arm slip around her waist. Naguchi was back, and looked like a woman to reckon with. "Who owns the fastest hoverbike?" she said, her voice cool. Cool, strong, authoritative. Roth said, I guess that would be me?" Naguchi nodded at her. "Where is it?" "East Lock, keycard's in it." Naguchi smiled briefly at her, the expression calm and yet somehow chilling. The Nitrogen Queen was back, only this time there was something else under the icy facade. Ackland laid a hand on Naguchi's shoulder and turned her roughly to face him. "That's it. You're taking off. What about the rest of us?" His voice was heavy with anger, his composure blustery. "I thought you were supposed to be in charge. Where's your sense of responsibility?" Naguchi took a deep breath, and then she punched Ackland low in his gut, hard.